Hello everybody, Aaron from Victory Glass. Today we're going to show you how to resurrect an early 1950s Seeburg jukebox. Whether it's a machine that has been sitting dormant for many years in your basement, or maybe you just picked it up as a project. But today we're going to show you how you should be able to get that machine running with 3 of our replacement updated solid state components. As many people have probably figured out already, finding people to work on these machines is getting to be pretty tough. Jukebox repairmen are hard to find. People to send parts to for rebuilding, such as amplifiers, selection receivers, etc., can be kind of hard to find, and typically they're backlogged, many months or sometimes years. So we've addressed that problem with some of our replacement products that are simple to install, and with a little bit of guidance from our company with videos like this or our tech support, we're glad to help you get your machine up and running. The items that we're going to be installing into this Seeburg R include these 3 items. This first item is our solid state replacement amplifier. This is model SSA2. And this is a direct bolt-in replacement. So the original amplifier, which of course was used vacuum tubes, those amplifiers, in order to be put back into service, would need to be rebuilt, at a minimum recapped, which means the capacitors inside those amplifiers tend to dry out over time, and they end up needing to be replaced because they go way out of tolerance or out of spec from what their original value was. And that can not only lead to, that can not only cause poor sound, but it can also lead to failure of other items such as transformers and vacuum tubes. So plugging in one of these jukeboxes after it's been sitting for many years without being serviced is a bad idea, primarily for that reason alone, is that the capacitors within the amplifiers and selection receivers typically need to be replaced because they're so far out of spec that they will cause a cascade effect and cause other items to fail and end up making a bigger problem for you. But with our solid state replacement amplifier, you don't need to worry about having the original unit serviced. You don't have to find anybody to send it to and wait 6 months or longer to do it. And on top of being able to just install the amp and get right back into operation, our replacement solid state amplifier also includes a host of new features as well. We incorporated Bluetooth streaming into our amplifier, so when the machine is not playing a record, it will automatically switch over and play Bluetooth off of your smartphone or tablet. You can stream any music source such as Pandora, Spotify, whatever you'd like, into the amplifier. So the machine will play Bluetooth music while it is idle. And then we also have our JukeTalk remote control app available at no charge for these amplifiers as well. And the JukeTalk app allows you to control the power of the jukebox from a smartphone. It allows you to adjust the volume up and down. It allows you to cancel a selection, and it also allows you to make selections on the phonograph from your smartphone as well. And again, that's all included for free with the purchase of our amplifier. It's called JukeTalk, and it's a free download from the App Store. So that's one of the items that we're going to be installing into this R today. The next item we're going to install in this Seeburg HF100R is our solid state pinbank unit. This is the memory unit that goes on the mechanism that's used to store any selections that you make from either the keyboard or remotely from a wall box or from our JukeTalk app. So this unit replaces a mechanical unit that is mounted to the mechanism that has its own variety of issues that come up from time and moisture and tarnishing and other problems that occur with solid state or with the original mechanical pinbank units. It is possible to service them, but that is a chore in itself. So our solid state pinbank units are easy to install, and you just simply put the mechanical pinbank unit aside and you're ready to go. The last item we're going to install into the Seeburg R today is one of our solid state credit units. Now the credit unit on a Seeburg jukebox is responsible for not only tracking the number of credits that you have, in other words, the number of coins that you've deposited, but the action of the credit unit is also what will take care of sending the pulse into the memory unit to make a selection. So the original units were mechanical. They operated off of a series of solenoids and magnets to turn a mechanical unit. And just like everything else mechanical, over time they get sticky, they have bad connections, other problems come up. And those can be a source of issues on Seeburg jukeboxes as well. If you can't make selections, or they'll blow fuses, and a variety of other things can happen. So our solid state credit unit is a simple plug and play unit that will replace the original mechanical credit unit and solve any problems that it may have. So these are the three pieces that we're going to install into the Seeburg R today. Again, this machine, we have not so much as even plugged it in. I don't know the history of it. I don't know how long it's been sitting. But by the end of the day today, we're going to have this thing up and running and ready to enjoy. So with that being said, let's get started. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, let's get started. So again, today we're working on a Seeburg R, but the information in this video pertains to all Seeburg pinbank models with the exception of Model A. So in other words, this pertains to models B, C, G, W, R, and J. So the layout of the cabinets is a little bit different between models, but the bulk of the information in this video is exactly the same. So we'll get started by opening the back door and just explaining what is inside here. So on my left, this is the amplifier, and on the right is our selection receiver. So to get started, we're going to go ahead and remove the rear door of the rear cover of the back door. There are 3 wing nuts to remove. And after that, the rear cover comes off and it just lifts off the back door. And that exposes the insides of this selection receiver and amplifier. So again, as I mentioned earlier, this jukebox has never been touched by us. I don't know the history of it. I don't know anything about it. I do see that this is basically all original. I see somebody has changed 2 capacitors in the filter section, but the majority of the amplifier is untouched. So again, plugging this machine in would have probably been a bad idea because it would probably have sounded very poor and may have ruined other items as well within the amplifier. So, okay, so let's begin by removing the original amplifier. There are 3 plugs that need to be disconnected on the top side. There's the RCA connector, which is your audio in from the phonograph. And then right next to it is a 3-pin connector called the muting connector. That is what silences the amplifier as the mechanism is scanning. And then on the lower side is a 4-pin plug, which is the speaker output. So we just simply unplug that and put it aside. Now we can remove the 4 mounting screws that hold the amplifier in place. There are 2 at the bottom and 2 at the top. And they are keyed with eyelets, so we just simply loosen the 4 screws. And the amplifier is joined to the selection receiver, and sometimes you have to pry them apart with a Phillips screw or with a straight blade screwdriver to get them to separate. Sometimes you got to work them a little bit to get them to separate, which is the case on this one. Okay, and once it's over far enough, the amplifier just simply slips over the eyelets and can be removed and put aside. Okay, so now that the tube amp is out of the way, we're ready to install our new solid state amplifier. It mounts in the original location, just where the tube amp was previously located. So it just simply slides in from the rear over the eyelets and then to the right. And now we do need to, on the top 2 screws, we need to include the new star washers for grounding purposes. So we will remove the top 2 screws one at a time and install the star washers with them. Again, these are to help create a good grounding connection. Go ahead and tighten that one down nice and tight. And I will do the same on the other screw. Okay, and we can also then tighten the lower screws. Now on the underside of the amplifier, there's only one connection that needs to be made. That is what we call the play control. That plugs into the selection receiver into the lower of the 2 jacks of the selection receiver. And that's it for the underside. Okay, on the top side of the amplifier, we need to plug in the 3 connectors that we unplugged from the old tube amplifier. We'll start with the 4-pin speaker output cable. Then we will also connect the RCA jack, phono input, and the 3-pin mute plug. Then we will connect the new power connectors that we ship with the new amplifiers. We'll start with the output connector, just a little adapter, plugs into the amplifier, and then our new power cord as well. Next, we're going to bring the original jukebox power cord inside the machine. And this will now plug into the output of the amplifier. Next, we're going to install our new solid-state credit unit. The credit unit is located on the selection receiver, which again is on the right half when viewing from the rear. So to install the credit unit, we'll start by removing the old unit. That is located towards right around the center of the selection receiver. We'll start by simply unplugging the 8-pin connector that connects to the credit unit. And then we will loosen the 4 screws. You don't need to remove them. You simply loosen them a few turns, or a turn really is about it, because they are sitting on an eyelet that we'll simply lift up in a second here to remove it. Then on the top side, typically there's 2 things that need to be unplugged. There's the coin switches, if they're present. Sometimes those are gone from machines. And then also the connector that goes up to the keyboard as well. So now that those are unplugged, the credit unit simply slides up and out, and the old credit now can be removed and put aside. Now it's time to install our replacement credit unit. This credit unit mounts in the original location where the mechanical unit was, and simply places, drops in from the top side, and secures with the 4 screws. We'll tighten the 4 screws. And on models R and J, we simply plug the connector in underneath. Now on the top side, we need to plug in the 8-pin connector, which goes up to the keyboard. We plug that into the credit unit, like so. And that's it. Our solid-state credit unit is installed. Okay, now it's time for us to install the replacement pinbank unit, which is the most complicated out of the 3, but if you follow the directions step by step, it shouldn't be too bad for you. So we'll start by opening the back door. And on this model R and J, there's a rear access panel that is released with a latch. You have to reach your hand up inside here and pull the lever down, which reveals the pinbank. There it is. Models B, C, G, and W are, it's the same design as far as the pinbank goes, but on those models, the whole back door lifts off. So that exposes everything for you to see. So we'll begin by unplugging the pinbank cable, which goes down to the selection receiver. There are 2 connectors that need to be removed. There's a simple bayonet style connector. This is called the play control. And then there is a large 27-pin connector called the Jones plug. Okay, now we can begin by removing the pinbank. We will start by unplugging. There's 1 connector on the side, only on models R and J. These are for the end cap lights. We'll unplug that. And there are 4 screws securing the pinbank to the mechanism. So we will go ahead and remove those. Okay, now we can remove the pinbank and it can be put aside. Okay, now that the pinbank has been removed, now we need to mark our wires on what's called the contact block, or affectionately known as the frog board. Frog block, for frog board, frog block.
The instructions on which wires to mark are in the pinbank manual. But once those wires are marked, it's important to mark them because the colors over time all look the same. So it's hard to tell once you cut them off what's what. So that's why it's important to mark those ahead of time. So we only need to mark 2 wires out of 5. Okay. Then we need to remove the contact block bracket. We need to simply bend a little clip out of the way and remove 2 screws. And the bracket is free. Okay, now it's time to install the new frog block. We need to connect the 2 wires that we previously marked to the appropriate terminals, known as A side and B side. Okay. Now that those are in their appropriate locations, we can trim our zip ties off. And the remaining 3 wires are not important, so they simply get stowed in this other connector that is just simply labeled unused wires. And then we can secure the frog board to the mechanism arm. Lastly, we need to make sure that the wires are clear of the pickup arm. If the wire clamp is broken or missing, it could be in the path of the arm that lifts the record. This one looks good. Okay. Okay, now it's time for us to install the main pinbank circuit board. There are 3 cables to connect onto the board. There's the main power cable, there's our selection pickup cable, and our end cap power cable. So we'll plug these in, and then we will carefully route the wires down through the hole in the cabinet, like so. Okay, now that our cables have been routed down through the cabinet, we can connect our 4 screws here, install our 4 screws to mount the pinbank board to the mechanism. We'll start off just by centering it, which is normally all that is necessary. Okay, now that our pinbank is mounted in place, we need to simply set our gap by adjusting the brackets slightly to make sure we have about an 1/8 inch, 16th to an 1/8 inch gap on our pickup tubes, which we do now. So that's all that's necessary for adjustments. Then the last step to complete at the top half near the mechanism is to plug in our connector for the end cap lights. This is only on models R and J. So we include a little pigtail adapter, which then simply plugs into the pinbank like so. Okay, now we need to connect our cables that we dropped down from the pinbank unit through the hole in the cabinet to the selection receiver. So we'll start by connecting our octal connector, our 8-pin octal connector, which plugs into the 2050 socket on the selection receiver, like so. And the other 2 cables will connect into what we call our Jones plug. So you'll see there's just a regular RJ45 plug, and as well as a 2-pin power cable. And that plugs into the Jones plug socket on the selection receiver, where we unplugged the cable previously. Our last connection we need to make underneath is our play control connection. That's that simple bayonet style connector. It just simply plugs together and twists like so. And that's it. We're ready to test. Okay, so now it's time for the big test. I've connected our wired remote control that is included with our solid state amplifiers. It makes it much more convenient to get at the power, reject, and volume controls, which were previously way down in the back and the bottom of the machine. So let's hit the power button and see what we get. Hey, look at that. We've got lights. That's a good start. There's our Bluetooth message. So let's see. We've got our select light on, which is a good thing. Let's go ahead and hit G9. Look at that. She's coming to life. Looks like we've got a bulb burned out on the record playing indicator, but that's not a big deal. I took my troubles, not too mad and real. Look at that. We're in business. She's got a pad down a very broken mind. 7 little bottles of nerve potion. Let's try the reject button here to cancel. Yep, works great. Yeah, the machine stops like it should after the last selection. Just like that, we're ready to go. Now, we're not always as lucky, just being totally upfront here. Sometimes the mechanisms do need some attention. So we'll be covering that in a future video. There are some, at minimum, some lubrication points that need to be covered on these mechs. And there's also a few rubber components that like to dry out over time, such as a motor coupler and motor mounts. So we'll dig into that. And then sometimes these mechanisms, if they have sticky lubrications, they might require a certain pin to be driven out and cleaned and put back in. So we don't always get this lucky, just being totally upfront. But in this case, we're ready to go, and we could pair up our phone to Bluetooth and enjoy Bluetooth streaming on it immediately as well. So, as you can see, you can accomplish this pretty easily in an afternoon. Previously this could take weeks, months, or longer, depending on how you sent out your amplifier for rebuild, pin bank, and dealt with any other issues that might come up. So it really does help get these machines working quickly and reliably as well. If you're in the repair or restoration business, you can be confident that you will not get a call back from the customer due to a faulty amplifier, pin bank, or credit unit. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us at victorglass.com, and we'll be glad to help you out. Thanks everybody for watching.